The time is just gone 8:20 a.m. and we are now going to take a look at unpacking the U.S. elections, and it has been clear that Joe Biden has been the clear winner. And also when it came to the swing states as well, just looking at the ground that Joe Biden had actually made over Donald Trump. The key question here is, what does Joe Biden do now? And we've seen a comment come through from the Mandela Foundation on the U.S. election and saying that now begins the undoing of Trump's prejudice, and that comes from the Mandela Foundation. But at the same time, Trump refusing to concede defeat, saying that Biden is rushing to falsely pose as the U.S. election winner. Now, what does this actually mean for the outcome of the election, and also looking at the deep divide that the U.S. election has created? And we're joined on the line by Brooks Spector, a retired U.S. diplomat now living in South Africa. Brooks, good morning as always. Welcome and thank you for your time with us.
Good morning. Good to be with you. Let me just add that I'm also associate editor of the Daily Maverick. I've been writing columns and articles on this process for the since it started. I guess.
Yes, definitely. Well, I suppose, election season is over now in the United States of America, and just looking at reactions coming through from right across the entire world, there have been certain mixed reactions coming through. But the key issue here is Joe Biden, now the President of the United States of America. He has got quite a huge task, and I'm seeing this article in the Daily Maverick, Brooks, talking about after the celebration, there's a deep divide that needs to be bridged.
Yeah. No, I mean, let's be clear. Joe Biden was elected, and in time, all of the processes that go forward into the transition will happen, whether Donald Trump likes it or not. But it's going to be awkward and complex for the next little while the Trump campaign decides to refight the election in the courts. Maybe that's not the mature approach, but that's the path they seem to have chosen. But regardless, the Biden forces, he's not president yet, doesn't have to the 20th of January, but he's already signaled in a number of different ways that he has some serious first order priorities. One of them, obviously, is dealing with the COVID pandemic in a way that embraces science and medical advice, and that provides a national platform for leadership by the federal government, and serious encouragement to states and local governments to join in that process rather than the rather chaotic version of things that they have now, because it truly is a crisis at this point. The death toll is rising rapidly. The number of infections is rising faster than it has before. The other half of that, of course, is the state of the economy, which flows from the questions of the pandemic. And then behind that is what I call the push for racial redress, which embraces a lot of different things, but which calls for measures that will deal with the structural inequalities in the country, something that you're not going to solve in an afternoon, to be sure, something you won't solve in 4 years, but you aren't going to solve it at all if you don't begin to address it. But there's only so much the Biden camp can do until he actually takes office. He can signal his interests, he can signal his priorities, but he has no administrative, managerial, or political authority to make anything happen yet. And that's because the country is not a parliamentary system. If you were Britain, or to some degree here, or any number of other parliamentary systems, there's a government in waiting, a shadow government from the opposition party or parties ready to step in. In the United States, you don't do that because there is no assumption that there is a shadow government in waiting. There's no assumption that members of Congress will become the senior officials in the cabinet. For example, the president who comes in has to appoint an entirely new political staff for the White House, and then on the basis of personal choice and political consideration, pick the members of the cabinet and other senior officials and cabinet members, and some of the others have to be confirmed by the Senate. So that ultimately, right from the start, becomes a political discussion. So that's why you have 2 months of transition between now and the 20th of January. Curiously busy time, but it's an awful time because the country doesn't have two presidents, but it has less of one than it had before and more of one than it had previously at the same time.
Yes. Now, the key question here is to look at the United States. Obviously, the pandemic is one issue, and the economy, but just in terms of the divide, because this seems to be a message that comes out very, very strongly in terms of Biden getting to work on plans to govern a divided United States of America. And we know that at this point in time, the American nation is split right down the middle, Bruce.
Well, I mean, it's easy to say that Donald Trump's campaign uh, earned the allegiance of 70 some million people. Yes, those people voted for him, but one of the interesting features of this is in many elections for members of Congress and some Senate elections that were also held at the same time, more people in particular districts voted for the Republican candidate there than voted for Donald Trump in that same district. That says to me there is a degree of division within Republicans as to whether or not they would uh, strongly personally support Donald Trump. My rough calculation, more of a guesstimate than mathematics, is that of the Republican vote for president, probably half of that was people who will vote Republican regardless of the candidate. And about half of it was people that feel strongly on a personal basis toward Donald Trump. Stitching together those constituencies with the Biden constituency, that is going to be a task that isn't going to happen across the board. The Biden administration is going to have to find points of commonality and begin to pick away at that difference rather than simply say, we're all in this together, we're all Americans. It's a good word, but it doesn't solve the problem.
Yes. Now, just looking at it from a foreign policy perspective, and we've seen a number of articles already coming through, talking about obviously the Palestinian cause, where Donald Trump featured very, very prominently, but also in some of the other issues like NATO and Brexit and also Iran, which has obviously been in the spotlight for far too long. Just your thoughts, Brooks, on the U.S. Its foreign policy under a Joe Biden presidency.
Um, to a considerable degree. Let's remember that Joe Biden was an integral part of the Obama presidency for 8 solid years, right? And there is no reason to assume that a Biden presidency is going to be starkly different from the Obama administration in which he served. Uh, and in fact, you see Joe Biden saying first order of business and foreign affairs among them, rejoining the Paris Climate Accord, uh, reinstituting relationships with WHO, the World Health Organization, working to rejoin the six power nuclear accord with Iran, uh, building a more solid cooperative relationship with allies in East Asia and in Western Europe, and in building a better, stronger, multinational coalition of nations, all of whom have interests in getting China to adhere to uh, a, a more open, transparent trade and financial policies, rather than the way the Trump administration had chosen to take on China, just with a great deal of bluster and fuss. There are legitimate issues, but it's not entirely clear the way the Trump administration chose to deal with them made any sense or had much effect. And for issues like for areas like the Middle East, I think largely you look to the Obama administration's history to see the pattern for the future. With the footnote for all of this is that that there's been a 4-year period where there was no Obama administration, to put it bluntly. And so the relative position of the U.S. versus other parts of the world is probably less dominant than it was 4, 5, 6 years ago.
Well, Brooks, let's see what develops over the next few months, and particularly when Biden officially takes office. And I'm sure you and I are going to have a lot more discussions. But for now, thank you very much, and we do appreciate your time as always.
It's a pleasure, and I suspect that we will have a chance to talk about this at some length in the future over the next little while, for
We
sure.
we certainly will. All the best to you, sir. Take care.
You too. Bye bye.
Brooks Spector joining us this morning, just unpacking some of the issues with regard to the U.S. election. We come back, we're going to be joined by Naeem Gina, Executive Director at the Afro Middle East Center, and the question that is being raised, could Joe Biden be the savior for the Palestinian cause?
They say breakfast is the most important.